Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to day 2 of the India Food Forum 2018. I can see it's going to be a bit of a slow start, but we'll pick things up as we go along. And to pick things up from the very start, we're going to continue a brief conversation that we had yesterday about alliances with foreign partners, foreign brands, in expanding the food market in India. We're going to begin this session with trade commissioners of various countries. We're going to be looking at avenues for partnerships in food, beverages, food service, and how embassies and trade commissions can play a more proactive role to facilitate such alliances. We are an emerging major market in the world, in India, and with the opportunities for manufacturers, producers, providers of products, this seems like the right time to be having that dialogue. So I'd like to call up our panel. We have Adam Branson, who is Senior Agricultural Attaché at the US Consulate, Hector Cueva, Consulate General and Trade Commissioner at the Embassy of Ecuador, Ian Wright, Director General, Food and Drink Federation in the UK, Louis Caballo from Peru, François Lalanne, Agricultural Councillor, Embassy of France, Parthiban Muthukumarswamy, Agricultural Councillor, Embassy of Canada, and Puneet Gupta, Managing Director, LCAMS. And to lead the discussion, we're going to have Amit Lohani, who is Founder Director of the Forum of Indian Food Importers and Managing Director at Max Foods.
So very good morning to all of you. My name is Amit Lohani. I represent the Forum of Indian Food Importers. And I would request Hector to come on stage. I think he's still, yeah. So the whole idea behind this session has been the fact that we wanted to bring forward the alliances that we have forged over the years with the embassies and the trade commissions in India, which have been working towards bringing international products to the Indian audience. The Indian diaspora has been greatly appreciating categories which have been developed all across the world and have been now initiated by these trade commissions or sometimes entrepreneurs who go and travel all across the world. Jahangir, yours is the next session. So that's all right. You can be in the audience and ask some questions. So. No problem. Please go ahead. So the alliances that we forged with these people, and they have been instrumental in trying to bridge the gaps which have been there in the market. So that's the whole idea behind the session, and we have an excellent panel which is representing different embassies and high commissions in different sectors, and everyone is representing also a certain category of products that have been coming into India and have been creating ripples in the Indian food scenario. So just some food for thought. I wanted to discuss some success stories in India which have happened in the past. So that would give you a perspective on how the market has grown. So about 20 years ago, when pasta was launched in India by one entrepreneur who got it from Dubai, the story was that pasta is something which is a gourmet category product, which is an Italian delicacy traditionally used, made at home, and then there is the packaged version which is available to the Indian audience. It went to the 5-star hotels, translated that from there to small restaurants and cafe, and then went to the catering business. And then it opened up a Pandora's box, and we see now India manufacturing huge amounts of pasta made from Italian drum wheat, made from local drum wheat, and that has been the key success. So it has gone from the traditional artisanal way of Italy to the homes and the kitchens of normal household, where ladies have put it in the tiffin box of a small child, not a small child, but a teenager who loves pasta. Now pasta is becoming a staple, which was earlier an international gourmet product. Same has been the success of almonds. We've been importing almonds for the last, I think, 40, 45 years, maybe more. And the story always was that the almonds are from Kashmir. That was the perception that we had, that the almonds are coming in from Kashmir. Nobody knew that a lot of these almonds are coming in from California, and they are now one of the largest exporters of almonds to India. So we are currently importing about $500 odd million worth of almonds, if I'm correct. And the market is growing at exponential pace. So these success stories have been great for the Indian industry. Danish butter cookies, again, something which represented the Danish legacy in terms of a butter cookie packed in a 454-gram tin was being imported in India during a certain festive season, which was Diwali. And now we find that a lot of Indian companies like Kraft or local Indian companies, our importers who were earlier importing these products have started manufacturing these products in India and now re-exporting it to the Middle East and Africa and other markets. So the market can, if you look at the evolution of the market, it starts from a gourmet product, comes into India, it's developed in India, once it reaches a critical mass, and then the product is produced in India, and then it is being re-exported to India, from India. So the Make in India story, which Mr. Modi is talking about maybe 3 years ago, has been going on for almost 15 years by entrepreneurs in India, and there have been great successes which have happened in that category. So this is something which has been there. We always talk about the challenges in India. Everyone talks about the food safety challenge, the labeling requirements, the legal metrology challenge. But what I want to put to this panel is, we have challenges on both sides of the border. The challenges in India are the challenges where we have laws and regulations which hinder sometimes our non-tariff barriers, and tariff barriers hinder growth in India. But we also talk about challenges from the foreign side where perceptions about India are not positive. They are not aware of the Indian market scenario. They believe that India is not a market for them. So we had to go and convince them about 20 years ago that India is a great market for them. So when the first artisanal cheese or first gourmet product came into India, we had to convince the exporter to give it to us because he did not believe that the market is there for the Indian audience. But now we still find that certain sectors or certain countries are facing that challenge, because when I travel abroad, whether it is South America, Canada, Europe, I find a lot of companies are skeptical to come to India. They're more happy to go to easy markets like Singapore, Dubai, Thailand, Japan, and they say the access has been very easy over here. But they don't realize the fact that most of these countries are growing at about 1 to 2% of GDP, whereas India is growing at about 6 to 7%. So that growth story in India cannot be even compared to the story going around all across. So that's something that I wanted to discuss with the audience. And I'll start with Parthi, who represents the Canadian High Commission, that how have you been able to overcome? You've been here for the last 3 years now, and you must have seen the challenges when you go to your country and ask your exporters to come to India. What are some of the questions they ask about India, or what are the misconceptions that they have, and how do you change the whole ball game in front of them?
Thank you, Amit. I often say back to my government in Canada that my biggest challenge is not in India. My biggest challenge is working back and convincing Canadian companies to look at India as a market. You are right about the perceptions. For some people, even with this modern world and technology, India is too far away. We see often Canadian companies very happy doing business domestically or within the North American context, but is very shy or reluctant to go beyond the North American context. We always tell the Canadian companies that you need to have 3 Ps if you need to work in India. First is to establish partnership, have to be patient, and have to have a lot of perseverance if you need to look at India. If you don't have these 3, don't even consider coming and doing business here. So as a trade commissioner, I think our job is also to work back in our own countries and educate the Canadian companies about the opportunities, allay some of their perceptions and concerns about the market, and encourage them to come and do business here. I think more than 50% of my work is allocated to that. There's a lot of opportunity here. I have never come out of a meeting with one of the importers or one of the industry here without identifying an interest. But the challenge is working backwards. And Amit, you are right on what you said. But that is, I think, challenge for all of us, not just for Canada. But it's changing slowly, I think. There's lots of changes happening in India. Like you mentioned, almonds and others. Like another classical example is dry fruits. So the opportunity have exploded in India. 2 years ago, I was talking to a largest Canadian exporter of dry fruits, berries basically, and he told me bluntly, India is not in my map for next 5 years or 10 years. We are focusing on China. I don't have resources to look at India. But today, the same exporter is exporting. Last year, he exported over 100 tons, just 1 year. And he is all over now. His focus has changed. So India is growing very, very fast. What was not a priority 2 years ago, what people didn't know a year ago, people are looking at it now. So I'll stop there. But any of my colleagues have any points they can add.
So absolutely, you bang on that we find this change happening in India and also overseas, where companies have now understood the strength and they're looking towards India. So the whole gambit of products which has changed on the availability side is growing in India at a very fast pace. Ian, you are heading a delegation of UKTI where food and drink exporters from UK have come to India. And this has been the second year that they've been here, and you've come in support of them. So, you've been to India earlier as well. So what do you do to convince these exporters to come to India? And in real terms, because, sometimes they don't come to you in front and tell you the challenges that they believe, that they perceive about India. And now, because they've spent some time over here, they've listened to some people around, they've met some exporters and importers. So what is something that you have done to convince these exporters to come to India and look at India as a great opportunity for their products?
Well, thank you. Good morning. I think it's fair to say that the UK business community is in a sort of moment of flux at the moment because of the decision to leave the EU. And so on export markets generally, there's a kind of period of pressing the reset button. And our expectations of what the profile of British exporting will be are in the process of changing. So the questions that we ask about India are the same questions we ask about everywhere now. Is it a propitious market for us to enter? Is the value of the investment we need to make going to be paid back? And I think the thing that everybody who's been on the delegation is, and certainly yesterday we had my colleagues had excellent meetings with potential distributors and partners. I was at World Food India in Delhi in November, and colleagues there who were looking more at the idea of investing here to make here, alongside Mr. Modi's plans, were very engaged by the opportunity. And there have been some big investments in India. But before I did this job, I was director of Diageo. And the biggest acquisition Diageo has ever made, world's leading drinks business, is United Spirits. And the simple truth is that is bound to work. Because, as in fact you told us yesterday, the Indian middle class is bigger than the entire population of the United States. Now, you only need to know that one fact to know that there is an absolutely huge opportunity there. And whatever the barriers, whatever the soft difficulties of getting into the market, it has to be worth getting in. And it has to be worth retaining your presence over a period. This isn't going to be a quick payback. This is a 5 to 10 year journey for many of the people with us this week. But it's a huge opportunity. And I think the fact that we've managed to bring 20 people, and we could have brought another 20, and next year maybe we will, is an indication of the fact that people are now alive to the Indian opportunity.
Thank you, Ian. But I want to understand one more thing from you is that when they speak to you, what are the challenges that they talk about? Because, when we speak to them, the challenge has always been the price. Indian importers are always asking for a certain price. Indian retailers are always asking for a certain marketing budget. Now, we as an importing community have always been struggling with the fact that a lot of companies, when they come to India, they want to get into India through the trading route, which is that they want to sell you at the lowest price possible without trying to market into India, without wanting to pay listing fee in India, without wanting to do sampling in India. Now, what they tell you is, this is the product, you buy it out, do whatever you want to do, and we would not initiate marketing. And it becomes a chicken and egg story because they say, we would give you marketing budget once you reach a certain level. Now that becomes very difficult because at the end of the day, the Indian importer is not a brand owner. He is just representing that brand for a certain period of time. He might create that brand, and over a period of time, the company might tie up with a large corporation, which is definitely the entrepreneurs are kind of SMEs. They're small and medium enterprise. They're not large corporations. So let's presume a Future Group or a Godrej or a Tata. These guys go and tie up with them. And they're willing to do marketing then, but when it comes to real-time marketing beforehand, they are a little skeptical of doing marketing in India.
Yeah. Well, I think, one thing I would say is if you want to know about a market which is entirely driven by price, come to the UK, because the entire food market is about price. We have insane competition between our 6 supermarkets. And so anybody who is selling into the UK market is immediately preconditioned to price. That's the only thing that drives the market in the UK. I think I understand the point you're making about the relative scale of the distributor here and the business that it's distributing. But having spent, and this makes me sound like an extremely old and cynical character, but I've spent 20 years doing this, and I hear that everywhere. The business of bringing product into a large market is always going to be characterized by the what's the word? The lack of necessarily comparison of the size of the 2 partners, and it's just something you have to work through. And if you are prepared to invest in the market over a 5 to 10 year period, that will give both parties the necessary payback. If you're trying to find an instant solution, you're not going to get it anywhere, I suspect.
Thank you.